Discussion on district referendum efforts and future plans.
So I put together and embedded for you some different documents, but obviously there are lessons to be learned from certainly the first referendum that I've personally undertaken and worked with people on to get passed. And I've listed for you, I had shared this document earlier of all the things that we had actually done in order to promote the referendum. But in sitting back and looking at that, you certainly see gaps and things that maybe should be done in addition. So I've put together just some additional ideas and plans. I think the reality is that we've gotten good news on insurance, so the deficit that we were facing doesn't exist to the degree. I mean, we've got to still work out that budget to figure out what we want to be doing for the 14-15 school year. But long term, when you continue to look out, there are issues that we're going to have to deal with. So we need to prepare, I think, now for whether that referendum is a year from now or 18 months from now or whenever we're going to be moving forward. So it's, when you look back, we talked a lot about a referendum in the last year, but it wasn't until really January where it was approved, and then February where we started doing the work. So in February, March, and April, well, February and March, 2 months are what we had in terms of trying to get information out to people. So I think the first thing we have to do is start now. So we need to begin looking at how are we going to improve our communication with the public in all areas of the school district. Greg and I have spent a lot of time talking, and Greg, one of the things we talked about was the year that the last referendum where there was the addition placed onto the high school and we had improved the band area. One of the things that happened was we were able to energize those band parents, and they got out there and were active. And there had also been a referendum committee. And Greg said, I think maybe that's where we need to start. We need to figure out how do we engage more people, and we need to establish a committee and have individuals who represent all townships and areas of our school district, ask leaders from those communities to be part of this committee so that they understand the finances, they understand how education has changed, so that they can then be a spokesperson out in their communities with people who trust them more than perhaps they trust me or someone who isn't their neighbor and doesn't live right next door to them. So I think that's a key piece that we want to be looking at.
I think the other value of the citizens advisory committees is that really, for the most part, the citizen advisory committees has I think, been a very positive thing for the school district, because when we look at whether it's 4K, whether it was the referendum, at least when I participated, really the board has looked to them for a recommendation as to when and how we should be moving forward with these different initiatives. And they've taken some time, as Cindy is saying, to really study the value of whether it's first needed in the first place. I think we need to set the tone that we want to present the information, we want to take input from people. What seems obvious in our minds may not be so obvious to everybody in the community, and I think that's the value of those ad hoc committees, or as we call them in Tolman, the citizen advisory committees that we've had and utilized effectively for most everything major initiative that we've done.
So, you bring up the point that there are things that maybe seem obvious to us that other people don't understand, and so that's where the bullet point where I have, well, maybe we really need to start out with a community survey. And there are businesses in our state, School Perceptions, that's out of Slinger, Wisconsin. There are many school districts that prior to a referendum have developed a survey that goes out to everyone, so they really get feedback from the community about what's important to them in their school, in the school district, you know, what their areas that they don't understand, and so that we can use that survey information to be determining our messaging and communication types of things that we need to get out to people. So again, you can look through the ideas that I've listed. I think, you know, as we, you know, if the committee says in 18 months, yes, we think that's when we need to go to referendum, then we get out to all of those townships, find some meeting or establish some meeting to be able to speak to people there. One of the things that I am a little concerned about is that I've heard the statement that, you know, Toma just seems to be spending money like crazy. You know, we're not good stewards of taxpayer money, and I know that to not be true, and I don't know how we communicate that more effectively with the public. But one of the things that I did look up and that I embedded for you to take a look at is the school referendums that have been held since 2010. Because I think there's this idea that, you know, Toma was the only school district asking for additional funding. And when you look at our CISA area that's comprised of 25 school districts, 15 of them had gone to referendum before, you know, 15 have gone now. But since, you know, we're one of 15, and we were one of the last ones to go. Many of these school districts have gone, they're coming back a second time, so you can see some documentation on that. And then I didn't print off the entire document on referendums in the state of Wisconsin. There's 30 pages of information. There's been over 287 elections about school referendum in the last few years. So I think it's really important that people understand that the issue isn't about our board overspending. It really is about school funding and the challenges that we're faced with when it comes to funding public education, because a lot of changes that have taken place. And we've said over and over again, declining enrollment is one of the problems that is only complicating things for us, and that's true for also a lot of other school districts around the state. But again, we're putting measures into place that hopefully will help us reverse that particular trend.
I think too, you know, again, a lot of this is coming from, and I want to make sure we emphasize this. We have, and I think the board has a very good idea of what the finances are going to look like in 3 to 5 years. We've seen those projections. We're familiar with the numbers, but, you know, I want to emphasize, I want to go back. I want to look at the 14-15 budget, and I want to go back, and I think the first thing we have to do is establish the need. Okay? And I think that's something that you want to look at and see, you know, and so that we're clear that there is a need. I can tell you, looking at the numbers, there's going to be a need at some point in time in the future, okay, unless something changes. But that's something I think that we have to show you that there is that need, and I think I need the time to go back and look at those numbers, look at the impact of that the insurance has had on us, and there's still a lot of unsettled things that we have to look at in the budget. You know, we have to make work and figure out how that's going to happen. So.
And then no, that's okay. You can jump in anytime with any thoughts or ideas. We've certainly had enough conversations about this. You know, one of the things that we found out after the referendum is this Links television program that has a news program that airs out in the Camp Douglas area. Gosh, if I'd known that before, we would have tried to get on to get information out to that particular area. But also, I think we probably need to meet with, you know, have a meeting with local community members, business owners, real estate agents, those people who, you know, have employees as well that they can be talking with. So, you know, there's just, I think, more that needs to be done in that area. Two other areas I do think we're going to have to be looking at is the marketing issue. You know, we probably are going to need to set aside money for some kinds of publications that go out to residents of the Toma School District. We can't just be communicating, and I know we've talked about that a lot, we can't just communicate when we need something from people. We need to be doing that all the time, and we certainly try to do that with the website, and we've got information on there that's currently changing, and The Toma Journal is wonderful in allowing me to do the school bell and get information out that way, but I think we need more, because there are people that, that just don't watch the PEG channel, they don't go on our website to look at the school board meetings, they may not get the Toma Journal, they may think my articles are too long in the Toma Journal, I don't read them, whatever. We probably need to be looking at what are some additional things that we can do, mailings that go out on a regular basis to the public. And then lastly, looking back, I think we have to figure out a way to engage all of our staff members in being involved in the referendum. I know I would go out to some of the buildings and the teachers kind of looked at me like, well, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, what are you doing? We're all in this together, so are you talking with parents about it? And are you, communicating what the needs are and your concerns with people as well? So, I think there's a lot that we can do. There's certainly a lot that I know I've personally learned from going through the experience, and we'll just do a better job next time. So those are kind of my initial thoughts. I don't know if you have any concerns or.
One thing that just there's lots of those things, lots of other things we'll think about. I had even discussed with Mr. Murray about some of the things that we're talking about that look like we're just adding on to the budget, whether it's Montessori or the flexible calendar or some other things. And I don't know that we've made the case very well that we're not just adding these things. Some of these things we're transforming the way we do things, and they're not just additions, they're transformations. And so it's not like we're just adding those onto the budget. We're replacing additional approaches with new approaches. And so maybe we need to make that message a little clearer.
And I think that can be done through some of that PR, that the work that in terms of getting that kind of information out to the public. And as Greg and I have talked about, I frustrate him just every once in a while with like a grant that comes up, and it's like, we've got to take advantage of this. It would be silly not to when there's a need in the community. But being able to better articulate and lay out that plan of, this is when we want to have this accomplished by. So this is when there potentially could be a budget impact, and trying to piece that out a little bit better so that he's not feeling like, how do we fit all these things into the existing budget that we have. So that's another area as well.
And my bigger concern with all that is, school finance is really actually very simple. You get X amount of dollars, that's it. Okay? And, whether it was the online, if the online learning is a priority, which it is now because you approved that, we're only going to get X amount of dollars next year. And I think the history of the Toma School District, long before I have been here, is that we live within our means. Now, some might say we are spending more than we should be allowed to spend, but the fact of the matter is that we are levying the way we've always levied for the last 20 years since revenue limits were imposed. Okay, our mill rate is still one of the lowest in the area. It's consistently been there. So when we look at these different programs, and it doesn't matter which one it is that we have to live in X amount of dollars every year. So if we're going to add a program and the budget dollars aren't there, then something else has to go. Something has to change. But as far as what we're doing today versus what we're doing 20 years ago, I'm very confident to say we're not doing anything different than business managers in the past or district administrators. The revenue limits are they look complicated, but in the end they're very simple. You get X amount of dollars. Any other dollars have to come from other sources, whether that be grant dollars or local miscellaneous dollars, or if you don't have enough money, then you have to go to the voters and ask, and that's what we did. So now that the referendum hasn't passed, we're still under the same rules. We still have to live within our means, and our means are set every year by that revenue limit worksheet, which is based on a per pupil dollar amount and the number of students in the district. Our fund balance we've not dipped into our fund balance to pay for any programs, and our fund balance is probably the lowest in the surrounding area when you look at it on a percentage basis. You know, it's around 12 or 13%. You know, we looked at the 12 to 15%. When you looked at the Madison, the university fund balance, theirs was around 25 or 30%. Ours isn't anywhere near that. And as we showed tonight, in order to not have to borrow on a short-term basis, we would have to add $4 million to our fund balance. Well, we're not going to ask for that. You know, we're going to live within our means and do what's right for the citizens. So I just think that's important, that regardless of what we do, how we do it, we're living within the rules that have been established for us since the inception of revenue limits, and those were here in Toma long before either Cindy or myself have been, and we're just following those traditions of what was set down before us. Our mill rates have not risen, okay, they are still the lowest that they are in the surrounding areas. Our levies have went up, okay, but our mill rates have been pretty consistent, and that's the consistent measure throughout the state.
It's still a discussion. The referendum is still even though it's over with, it's still a discussion out there. I had an aide come to me and say they were talking with somebody else who I don't know about the referendum and the budget cuts that are coming or going to have to come and things, and they're discussing it. The person that she talked to said cut the football team, cut the football program, and we'd be okay. Well, this tells me several things. One is there's no concept. We need to educate. You know, the extracurriculars are what, only 3% of the budget or whatever, and one program in that would be even less. But it's telling me they're out there. I mean, it's still in people's minds. It's still front and center.
Well, and I think that's probably the case because it was so close. You know what I mean? So you have a split community. You know, so people were happy. People that were in favor of the referendum were happy, and then disappointed, and people who were opposed to it were disappointed and then happy. You know, so you know it's kind of the article I wrote in the Toma paper that there's been kind of this roller coaster feeling, and I think because just a few votes could have flipped it one way or another, it is a topic of discussion and interest. But you're right, I mean, the whole educational piece, and one of the things that I think we have tried not to do is, I don't want to say it would be disingenuous, but I think it would be, I guess, to say we're going to cut football. You know, I mean, I've had people suggest that to me. Take the program that's the most visible and get rid of it, and you'll get people out there to vote for it. That's not the approach that we've ever wanted to take, and we didn't take it with the referendum to begin with. You know, we're going to make cuts where they are reasonable to make, and you know, really closely scrutinize. You know, where we can make those changes, but we're not going to hurt good programs that we know our community enjoys and that we have a lot of participation in.
All of our reductions have been, and you know this, are based on the assumption that a referendum wouldn't pass. So how are they least intrusive in the educational environment? Mm-hmm. That's the only way it should be. Otherwise, I don't think it is a good way to do business, is to hold something over somebody's head in order to accomplish.
And you know, and I know one of the criticisms was that you didn't tell us, you know, you need to tell us more, you know, what you're going to cut or that type of thing, and we didn't want to do that because we talked about we've got a second tier of cuts, they're recommendations, but they haven't been approved because we don't want people to feel like, oh, that because they've got this listed, I've got to vote. You know, we didn't want to be saying that this is exactly what's going to happen, for fear that people would feel like they were being threatened. You know what I mean? It's like we're going to work, this is what, if we have to make cuts, that we'll be looking at next. But, you know, we're not going to say that this is certain what will happen. So that maybe didn't help us, but I think it was the better approach to use, because it's how we felt about that whole second tier of items. And again, we're still working on that budget for next year.
Well, at this table tonight, we've talked about education. Different facets have come up to us tonight, and we realize how important education is to our community. And Greg has mentioned the mill rate throughout the years has been consistent, better than most areas in the state. So the communication level between the citizenry of this district and us needs to be perceived as a little bit better. I mean, Greg, in a income that the family would be expending for the year, wasn't it $55?
It would have been $51 over a 3-year period. Actually, the mill rate wouldn't have went up last year. It actually would have been a reduction from this year. Again,
Right.
if the estimates would have.
I know, the economy is such a way that we want to keep as much of our income within the family structure as we can. But when you talk about 55, so let's just say $55 on a yearly basis, what can that mean to the family when you realize what you're trying to do in educating our children? And I think there's a perception out there from our community about boards, and it was said tonight about how you're just trying to spend more money. That's not the issue in this district at all over the years. So my feeling is communication with our different districts. And we had a couple of instances within our count that night that they had everything, two little areas had everything goofed up as far as votes. We gotta get that straight out there with the vote count. But more than anything, I think it's communication to the people that live in this district and what they want for their kids. And we've been given it. We certainly have.
I think the other thing, we all recognize, and I think it needs to be said, and I know Cindy has said this too, but just because somebody didn't vote for the referendum doesn't mean they don't support education either. And I've talked to some of those people, and I have heard the reasons why they might not be supportive of the referendum, and I respect that, but yet I still see them as supporting the school district. There's a lot of different reasons why people will or will not vote. And I think you hit it on the head. Our job is to first set the need. Okay? The board has to determine that there's a need to start talking to our taxpayers or our parents or our citizen about why we need to go to a referendum. And then we need to look at it, as Cindy suggested, looking at the advisory committee and then informing people. And in the end, that can be the only thing that didn't happen. We didn't get our information out because I don't believe that people, whether they voted for this or against it, don't care about our schools and our community.
It almost sounds similar, when we first took part in coming up with a strategic plan and looking at where we felt our needs were, what the community felt was our needs, their perception of the school, what they felt was important for the school to do and provide. It's almost the same. It's almost starting again. And I haven't gone to the Transforming Schools Committee, so I don't know how that can interplay in some of this, because I know we do have community involvement in that. Maybe somehow, I think part of the failure was that we really didn't communicate our need. I think that was it. And why, and where we see the district going. I think all of those things are important because I think, as you said, our community has always supported the school district, and I really believe people do, so. And I'm not sure if we can use the transforming committee at all and branch from that, or start a new entity and incorporate new people. I think we need to get those voices that had questions. We had a lot of good questions that came through the website and through different things, and get those people involved too with answers to their questions so that we do get the discussion moving.
And that, I think, it was one of the positives. I have heard from a lot of people that saying, I'm more than willing to be involved next time when we go for the referendum, because I obviously need to take a more active role to help promote that. So I think we've got people that certainly are willing and interested to be a part of that. I'm not sure that the Transforming Schools Committee certainly can be a part of helping us to show the need for change.
Right.
But I don't know that their mission is the same as what we would want that Citizens Advisory Committee to do.
Okay.
And again, the more opportunities for involvement, like here's the community involvement in transforming schools, but if we had another citizen committee with other people, the more opportunity, the better for more involvement, more people.
All right, well, thanks for all the thoughts, and I know, Cindy, I appreciate your comment. I heard you say it shortly after the referendum that we will be stronger for the experience, and it will make us think more about how we're communicating and who we're talking to, and make us work better at engaging people to help the next time around. So I appreciate everyone's positive attitude, and we still have a lot of good things going on.
Yes, we do.
We're not going to stop doing what we're doing.
Is Lex Television, is that like Hagen's Sports Network?
Yeah, kind of
It
is.
is.
They do a half-hour TV show down in the Lemonwire Valley every week. And they've got a studio right here in Toma, over by the Napa station. John was able to participate in a short little interview last week also. So.
Along with you and Mr. Steiner. We were all up there together.
Yeah. So, it's good.
Interesting experience. Okay.
So we'll be talking more
Yep,
about this.
this is going to be ongoing.
Yes.
Yep. I think someone, in some of the literature we saw, that they said the time to start working on a referendum is before you need a referendum. I mean, you're always working on your message.